My husband's funeral was quiet, heavy with silence. The air was still, and only the sound of shovels pushing earth filled the graveyard. As I stood beside the grave, clutching the roses I was about to drop onto his coffin, my phone suddenly vibrated in my hand. At first, I thought it was just another condolence message, but when I looked at the screen, my heart almost stopped. A message appeared. I'm alive. I'm not in the coffin. My knees nearly gave way. My hands trembled so much that I almost dropped my phone into the open grave. My breath caught in my chest, and I whispered under my breath, "Who are you?" The reply came quickly, almost instantly, as if the sender had been waiting for me to ask. "I can't say. They're watching." I froze. My mouth went dry. I glanced at the coffin, then at the faces around me, family, friends, neighbors, all dressed in black, heads bowed. Nobody seemed to notice me shaking. And that was the moment I began to uncover the truth. But before I tell you everything that happened after that shocking day, let me take you back to the beginning. My name is Margaret Collins. I am 71 years old, and I live in a small town in South Carolina, USA. Please, before we go further, I want you to do something for me. Make sure you subscribe, like, and click the notifications button for more upcoming interesting stories. And I'd love to know, from which part of the country are you watching this from? Drop it in the comments. Now let's get back to the story. My husband's name was Robert. Everyone called him Bob. We had been married for 50 years. He was a tall man with strong hands, even when he got old. And he had the kind of smile that made people feel safe. But in the last 2 years, his health had started to fail. Heart problems, the doctors said. They gave him medications. But Bob was never one to sit quietly and rest. He was always busy. Fixing things, working in the garden, even climbing ladders when he had no business doing so. The morning before he died, he told me, "Maggie, I feel fine. Better than I have in weeks." He kissed me on the cheek and went outside to prune the rose bushes. He was whistling. I still remember the tune. By afternoon he was gone. The neighbor found him collapsed near the tool shed. The doctor said it was sudden cardiac arrest. The whole town mourned him. Bob wasn't just my husband, he was the kind of man who helped everyone. If a neighbor's roof leaked, he'd fix it. If someone's car wouldn't start, he'd crawl under the hood. If a child was crying on the street, he'd kneel down and make them laugh. So the funeral was big. But strange. I can't explain why, but even before I got that message, something about it all felt off. It started with the coffin. When they brought it to the church, it seemed heavier than I expected. The pallbearers, 6 strong men, struggled with it. I remember thinking, was Bob really that heavy? He had lost so much weight near the end. Then there was the pastor. He spoke words of comfort, but I noticed his hands shaking as he turned the pages of the Bible. He avoided my eyes the entire service. And then there was Bob's brother, Michael. He kept staring at the coffin as though he didn't believe it himself. His lips moved, whispering something over and over, but I couldn't hear what he was saying. At the graveside, when the coffin was lowered, the silence was almost unbearable. No ver sang. The wind had died. Even the children stood still. I felt like the earth itself was holding its breath. And that's when the vibration came in my hand. That message. That impossible message. I'm alive. I'm not in the coffin. I wanted to scream, but my throat locked. I wanted to ask out loud, if you're alive, then where are you? But something inside me told me not to. Something about the words "they're watching" made me glance around at the mourners with new eyes. Who was they? Was it family? Neighbors? Strangers? Or was it everyone? For the rest of the burial, I could barely focus. My hands were cold and sweaty at the same time. My ears were ringing. I kept looking at the coffin, dirt piling on top of it, while my phone felt like it was burning in my palm. I didn't respond again. Not yet. I didn't know if I was talking to my husband, a cruel prankster, or someone trying to trap me. But later that night, alone in my house, the truth began to unfold in ways I never expected. The night after the funeral, the house was so quiet it hurt. I kept expecting Bob to come through the door, his boots heavy on the porch, his voice calling, "Maggie, where are you?" But he didn't. I sat in the living room, the lamp casting long shadows. My phone was still on the table in front of me, the message thread open. I stared at it for hours, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. Finally, I typed, "If you are alive, prove it." Seconds later, a reply came. "Check the box in the attic." My blood ran cold. The attic? Bob had always been protective of the attic. He kept it locked, and only he had the key. He told me it was just old junk, but I always wondered why he guarded it so much. I stood up, my knees creaking. The house seemed darker than usual, the air heavy. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step groaning under my weight. My heart pounded in my chest as I reached the attic door. And there it was, the key, hanging from the nail on the wall, just where Bob always kept it. I turned it in the lock, and the door creaked open. A rush of dust and the smell of mothballs hit me. I pulled the string on the single bulb overhead, and the attic lit up in a weak yellow glow. Boxes, old trunks, stacks of newspapers, and in the corner, a wooden chest. My hands shook as I walked toward it. The chest was covered in scratches, as though someone had tried to claw their way in, or out. I knelt down and slowly lifted the lid. Inside was something I never expected. Something that made me stagger back and press my hand to my mouth to keep from screaming. And that is where I will pause this part of the story. What I found inside that chest in the attic changed everything I thought I knew about my husband, my family, and even myself. But before I reveal what was in there, I need you to think about this. Sometimes the people closest to us carry secrets so heavy. They bury them not just from the world, but from the ones they love most. And the lesson here is simple. Never believe you know someone completely. Because even after 50 years of marriage, I learned that the hard way. The chest creaked as I lifted the lid, the hinges groaning like they hadn't been touched in years. My heart was racing, my breath short, and I could feel sweat beading on my forehead. Inside, instead of old clothes or keepsakes, I found papers. Dozens of them tied together with twine yellowed with age. I reached for the first bundle and pulled it into the dim light. They weren't just papers. They were letters. Each one carefully written in Bob's handwriting. But not to me. The name on the first letter made my stomach twist. "Margaret, if you're reading this, then they already know." My name, written in his handwriting. But the words were like a warning from another world. I flipped through the others quickly. Some were dated years ago. Others just weeks before his death. In each one, Bob wrote about being followed, about people watching him, about something he called the circle. The more I read, the more confused I became. He wrote things like, "They come at night, but only when the house is quiet. If anything happens to me, don't trust anyone, even family. The coffin may not be mine." I dropped the letters back into the chest, my hands trembling. My mind was spinning. What was Bob involved in? Who were they? Before I could piece anything together, my phone buzzed again in my pocket. I snatched it out, my pulse thundering in my ears. Another message. "Did you find it?" I froze. Whoever was sending these messages knew what I was doing, right now. That meant they were watching me. My eyes darted around the attic, scanning every corner, every shadow. There was no one there, but the sensation of eyes on me made my skin crawl. I typed back, my hands shaking. "Who are you? If you're Bob, prove it now." The reply came faster than lightning. "Look behind the chest." Slowly, my body stiff with dread, I crouched and leaned behind the wooden box. At first, I saw nothing but dust and cobwebs. Then, tucked against the floorboard, something shiny caught my eye. I reached in with trembling fingers and pulled it free. It was a small black device. A recorder. I pressed the button and Bob's voice filled the attic. "Maggie, if you hear this, then I'm not where you think I am. They force me into something I can't escape. Don't trust the coffin. Don't trust the circle. And whatever you do, don't let them know you're listening." The recording cut off suddenly, replaced by static. My legs went weak. My husband's voice, after he was supposed to be dead. My husband warning me about people I didn't even know existed. And just as I stood there frozen, my phone buzzed one more time. This time, the message wasn't words. It was a picture. A photo of me standing right there in the attic holding the recorder. The photo made my blood run cold. My hands trembled as I stared at the screen. It was me. Right there in the attic holding the recorder, my face pale with fear. The picture had been taken from the corner of the room. But I had checked. No one was there. My throat closed and I staggered backward until my back hit the wall. My mind screamed at me, "You're being watched. Someone is inside this house." The phone buzzed again. "Don't scream. Don't leave. Listen." I wanted to throw the phone across the attic, to shatter it against the floor. But fear kept me rooted. My chest rose and fell so hard it hurt. I typed back quickly, my thumbs clumsy. "Who are you? What do you want from me?" The reply came instantly. "I'm Bob. Trust me. I'll explain soon." I gasped. My knees buckled and I almost fell. My Bob? The same man I had buried. The same man whose coffin was now 6 feet underground? Was this real? Or some sick trick? I pressed the recorder again, hoping to hear his voice once more, but the device only gave static now, as though the message had been erased. Shaking, I closed the chest, shoved the recorder and a handful of letters into my pocket, and stumbled out of the attic. Every shadow in the house felt alive. Every creak in the floorboards made me whip my head around. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my chair with the lamp on. The letters spread across my lap, the recorder clutched in my hand. By dawn, I had read through as many letters as I could. A story began to form, though it made no sense. Bob had been afraid of the circle for years. He claimed they were watching him, that they wanted something from him, something he had discovered long ago. But what was it? The letters didn't say. One line kept echoing in my mind. "Don't trust anyone, even family." That morning, Michael, Bob's brother, came to the house. He was pale, his eyes bloodshot, as if he hadn't slept either. He sat at the kitchen table, twisting his hands together. "How are you holding up, Maggie?" he asked softly. I studied his face. He looked broken, but then I remembered how he had stared at the coffin during the funeral, lips moving as if whispering secrets. My heart pounded as Bob's warning rang in my ears. Don't trust anyone. I'm fine, Elid. Just tired. Michael reached across the table, placing his rough hand over mine. Listen, if anything strange happens, you come to me. Promise. I nodded, though inside doubt swirled like a storm. Was he part of it? Was he one of them? That night I decided to test the messages. I typed, "If you're really Bob, tell me something only you and I know." The reply didn't come right away. I waited, chewing my nails, my stomach in knots. Finally, the phone buzzed. "The night we danced in the rain behind the old barn. You were wearing that red dress. I said you looked like fire." My eyes welled with tears. No one else knew about that. It had been 50 years ago, before we even married. It had been our secret, a memory we never shared with another soul. I dropped the phone on my lap and pressed my hands to my face. "Oh God, it is you." I typed back furiously. "Where are you? How do I find you?" The response chilled me. "You can't find me yet. They'll stop you. Just follow the clues I left. Start with the letters." My mind raced. I looked back at the bundle of papers and noticed something I hadn't before. The dates on them formed a pattern. Every third letter mentioned a location. The tool shed, the church basement, the abandoned railway station outside town. Bob had left a trail. But following it meant stepping into whatever danger had trapped him. And I was 71 years old. What could I possibly do against whoever they were? Still, I couldn't sit back. Not if Bob was alive. The next day I started with the easiest place. The tool shed. It was where Bob had been found collapsed. I unlocked the door, the hinges squealing. Inside, the smell of oil and wood filled the air. Tools hung neatly on the wall, Bob's pride. But under the workbench, taped to the bottom, was a small envelope. I pulled it free, my hands shaking. Inside was a key. Just one. Old brass, heavy. No note, no explanation. Just a key. I stood there in the silence of the shed, the sunlight slanting through the dusty window, and felt the weight of it in my palm. A key meant a lock. But what lock? That night, as I sat staring at the key on the table, my phone buzzed again. Good. You found it. I swallowed hard. What does it open? I typed. The reply came. Not yet. You'll know when the time comes. But be careful, Maggie. They already know you're looking. My blood ran cold. I typed back quickly. Who are they? The circle? No reply. Instead, a loud crash echoed from outside my house. My heart leapt into my throat. I grabbed the key, stuffed the letters back into their box, and crept to the window. The porch light flickered on and off, like it was being tampered with. And then I saw it. Footprints in the dirt, fresh and heavy, leading straight to my door. I backed away slowly, my breath quick, my pulse hammering in my ears. Whoever they were no longer just watching from the shadows. They were here. And as I stood frozen in my living room, my phone buzzed one last time that night. This time, the message was only 2 words. Don't open. Then came the sound of a slow, deliberate knock at my front door. The knock came again. Slow, heavy, measured. Thud, thud, thud. Each strike rattled through my chest. I stood frozen, staring at the door, the phone still in my hand. My husband's warning repeated in my mind. Don't open. But the sound of the knock, it wasn't like a stranger's knock. It was deliberate, patient, as though whoever stood outside knew I was there and wasn't going to leave until I answered. I whispered to myself, "Stay calm, Maggie. Stay calm." The porch light flickered again, throwing strange shadows across the curtains. I tiptoed closer to the window, careful not to make a sound. Peeking through the edge, I saw nothing but the empty porch. No figure. No movement. Just those footprints in the dirt, pointing straight to my door. Then the phone buzzed again. Don't look. They'll know. I gasped and backed away from the window. My hands were trembling so hard the phone nearly slipped. My instinct screamed at me to call the police. But then I thought about the letters, about Bob's warnings not to trust anyone. What if the police were part of them? The knock stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the sound itself. My ears strained for the slightest creak or breath, but all I heard was the old clock ticking on the wall. Minutes crawled by. 10. 20. Nothing. Finally, I dared to step closer to the door. My fingers brushed the knob, but I didn't turn it. Something inside me knew that if I opened it, my life would never be the same again. Instead, I slid the deadbolt tighter, locked the chain and backed away. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my chair, clutching the key from the shed in one hand and the recorder in the other. Every sound of the house settling made me jump. The letters lay spread out before me like pieces of a puzzle I didn't yet know how to solve. When dawn finally broke, the world outside seemed calm again. The footprints on the porch had vanished, washed away by dew, but the fear inside me hadn't. I decided I couldn't keep this to myself anymore. If Bob had really left me clues, then maybe he wanted me to have help. Someone I could still trust. But who? Not Michael. Not the police. My mind turned to Sarah, my granddaughter. She was 25, sharp and fearless. She adored her grandfather. If anyone could help me piece this together, it was her. I called her. My voice shook as I asked her to come by, but I didn't explain over the phone. Within an hour, she was at my door, her long brown hair tied back, her eyes filled with worry. "Grandma, what's going on? You sound different." I pulled her inside quickly and locked the door. Then I showed her everything. The letters, the key, even the recorder. Her eyes grew wider with each revelation. "Grandma, this is insane. Are you saying Grandpa's alive?" "I don't know," I whispered. "But it's his voice. It's his handwriting. And these messages." I showed her the phone. She read them, her face pale. "This doesn't make sense. If he's alive, why wouldn't he come here himself?" "Because of them," I said almost in a whisper. "The circle. He said they're watching. That I can't trust anyone." Sarah sat back, chewing her lip, deep in thought. "If this is true, then we need to figure out who they are. And fast. Do you know what this key is for?" I shook my head. "Not yet." "But your grandfather said I'd know when the time came." Sarah picked up the key, studying it. "This looks old. Maybe it's for something in town. A locker, a safe, maybe a storage unit." Her practical tone calmed me a little. For the first time since the funeral, I didn't feel completely alone. But just as hope flickered inside me, the phone buzzed again. This time, the message wasn't from Bob. It was from an unknown number I had never seen before. The words on the screen made my blood freeze. "Stop searching, Margaret, or Sarah will be next." I looked up at my granddaughter. She was staring at me, waiting for me to explain why my face had gone pale. My hand shook as I turned the phone so she could see. Her eyes widened, and the color drained from her face. Grandma, they know who I am. Sarah's face went pale as she read the message. Her hand flew to her mouth and she whispered, Grandma, they know me. They know I'm here. I grabbed her hand tightly, trying to steady my own fear. Don't panic, sweetheart. That's exactly what they want. They want to scare us into stopping. But deep inside, my own chest was burning with terror. Whoever they were, they had been watching me closely enough to know Sarah had just arrived. That meant they were close. Too close. Sarah sat down, her eyes darting toward the window. We can't stay here. If they're watching, we're sitting ducks. I looked at the letters on the table, the recorder, and the key glinting in the sunlight. Leaving felt safe, but what if this house held more answers? Bob had chosen it as the starting place for his clues. Could I abandon it so soon? No, I said firmly, surprising even myself. We can't run. Not yet. Bob left these clues here for a reason. If we run now, we may never understand what he wanted us to know. Sarah frowned, then leaned closer. Okay, then let's think. This key, it's not random. Grandpa wouldn't give you something meaningless. Do you remember if he had any secret places in town? Somewhere he went often but never told anyone why. I thought hard. Memories of our 50 years together flooded back. The grocery store, church, his morning walks. Then it hit me. Yes. The railway station. It's been closed for decades, but Bob used to take long walks there. He said he liked the silence. He'd sit on the old benches for hours, just thinking. I always thought it was strange. Sarah's eyes lit up. That could be it. Old places mean old locks. Maybe the key fits something there. The idea filled me with equal parts dread and hope. If Bob had left something hidden at the station, it might be the next piece of the puzzle. But leaving the safety of the house meant walking straight into the open, where they could strike at any moment. Still, Sarah was right. We couldn't just sit here, waiting for the next threat. We packed the letters into a bag, slipped the recorder and key inside, and I tucked my phone deep into my pocket. Before stepping out the door, I whispered a prayer. Lord, give me strength, and keep Sarah safe. The railway station sat at the edge of town, swallowed by weeds and silence. Its tall iron gates sagged on their hinges, the paint long peeled away. Broken glass glittered in the sun where windows had once been. As Sarah and I approached, the air felt heavy, almost watchful. The place was too quiet, as though the world itself had abandoned it. This is creepy, Sarah muttered, gripping my arm. We pushed the gate open. It screeched in protest, echoing across the empty lot. Pigeons scattered from the rafters as we stepped inside. Dust danced in the sunlight streaming through the broken roof. Rows of benches sat covered in cobwebs. The old ticket booth leaned to one side, its glass cracked. And at the far end of the station, half buried under rubble, was a row of wooden lockers. My heart skipped. Sarah, look. We hurried over. Most of the lockers were broken open, rusted, their doors hanging loose. But one stood intact, its brass lock still shining faintly despite the years. Sarah pulled the key from her pocket and slid it into the lock. It turned smoothly, as though it had been waiting all these years for this exact moment. The door creaked open. Inside was a small metal box. I reached in and pulled it out. My hands shook as I placed it on the bench. We both leaned over it, hearts racing. Sarah whispered, "Open it, Grandma." I flipped the latch. The lid lifted, and inside lay a stack of photographs, neatly tied with string. The top photo nearly stopped my heart. It was Bob. Alive. Standing in front of a building I didn't recognize, his face thinner, older, but unmistakably him. And on the back of the photo, written in his handwriting, "Trust no one. Follow the trail. The circle is closer than you think." I flipped through the rest quickly. More photos, Bob in different places. Outside a warehouse, near a gas station, in front of what looked like a church basement. Each one had the same warning scribbled on the back. Sarah's hands trembled as she took the last photo from the stack. Her eyes widened. "Grandma, look at this one." I froze. The photo was of me, standing in my kitchen, taken through the window, from outside. My blood ran cold. On the back, Bob had written, They're already in the house. My legs went weak. I gripped the bench to steady myself. Sarah, this means someone's been inside. Sarah's face twisted with fear. But when? How? I was just there with you. My mind spun. Had they been watching us for days? Weeks? Had they planted something in the house? A camera? A microphone? The thought made my skin crawl. I stuffed the photos back into the box and slammed it shut. We can't go back. It's not safe anymore. Sarah grabbed my arm. Then where do we go? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. I pulled it out with trembling fingers. Another message. This time not from Bob. From that same unknown number. You should have stayed home, Margaret. Now it's too late. The sound of footsteps echoed across the empty station. Slow. Deliberate. Getting closer. Sarah's grip tightened on my hand. Her whisper was barely audible. Grandma, we're not alone. The footsteps echoed across the hollow railway station, each one sharp against the silence. Sarah's grip on my hand was tight enough to hurt. My heart hammered so loud I was sure whoever was coming could hear it. We ducked behind a row of old benches, crouching low. Dust swirled in the air as I tried to calm my ragged breathing. The steps grew closer. Slow. Confident. Not hurried, not cautious, like the person already knew exactly where we were. I risked a glance around the corner. A man in a long coat stood at the far end of the platform. His hat was pulled low over his face, shadowing his features. He carried a briefcase in one hand, his other hand resting casually in his pocket. He didn't look around, didn't search. He just walked steady as if following a path. Sarah whispered, "Do you think he's with them?" I didn't answer. Deep down I already knew. The man stopped near the lockers, the very ones we had just searched. He set down the briefcase, opened it, and pulled out a stack of papers. He flipped through them quickly, then looked up, his head turning slightly. For a moment I swore his eyes locked right where we hid. I pulled Sarah down lower, praying silently. Then the phone in my pocket buzzed. Loud in the quiet. The man's head snapped toward the sound. Sarah's eyes widened in horror. She mouthed, "Run." Without thinking, I grabbed her hand and we bolted. Our footsteps thundered across the wooden planks of the station floor, dust exploding in our wake. Behind us, the man shouted, his deep voice echoing, "Stop!" But we didn't stop. We ran through the broken doors, out into the sunlight, our breaths ragged and our hearts wild. My legs ached, but fear kept them moving. We tore down the overgrown path that led back toward town. We didn't stop until we reached the edge of the old gas station across the road, its rusted pumps like skeletons in the weeds. Finally, we collapsed behind one of the pumps, panting. Sarah leaned against the metal, clutching her chest. "Grandma, that was too close." I pulled the phone from my pocket, hands trembling. The message that had buzzed during our escape was still on the screen. "Don't run. He already knows where you're going." I almost dropped the phone. Sarah stared at it, her face pale. "What does that mean? Where we're going?" "We don't even know where we're going." But then I remembered Bob's photos. The warehouse, the church basement, the gas station. I looked up at the broken sign hanging above us. Harrison Gas. And suddenly my stomach twisted. This place was one of the spots in the photos. Bob had been here. "Sarah," I whispered, he knew. "He came here too. This is part of the trail." Sarah's fear turned to determination. "Then we need to search. Now." We crept around the back of the gas station, our eyes darting to every shadow. The building was half collapsed, the roof sagging, weeds growing through cracks in the pavement. We stepped carefully over broken glass, pushing through the rusted back door. Inside, the air smelled of mold and gasoline. The floor was littered with old cans and rags. The silence pressed against my ears. Sarah's phone light illuminated the dark corners. "Where would Grandpa hide something?" she whispered. I scanned the room, my eyes catching on an old metal cabinet leaning against the wall. Its doors were chained shut with a padlock. My heart leapt. "The key," I whispered. Sarah's hands flew to her pocket. She pulled out the brass key and fit it into the lock. With a soft click it turned. The chain clattered to the ground. We opened the cabinet slowly. Inside was another box, smaller this time. I reached for it, my fingers trembling. Sarah leaned closer as I opened the lid. Inside were more letters, but these looked different. Newer. The paper was crisp, the ink fresh. The top letter was addressed to me. I unfolded it carefully. The handwriting was Bob's. Maggie, if you found this, it means you followed the trail. Good. But time is running short. The circle will not stop. They are closer than you think. Remember, the coffin is not what it seems. Do not trust the grave. If you want to find me, you must uncover what lies beneath. I gasped, my chest tightening. The grave. The coffin. My husband's body, or what I thought was his body. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. Grandma, are you saying Grandpa's coffin might be empty? Before I could answer, a sound shattered the silence. Glass breaking at the front of the station. Heavy footsteps crunched across the floor. They had found us. Sarah grabbed my arm. Her whisper was sharp with panic. Grandma, we're trapped. The sound of breaking glass tore through the silence, sharp and violent. Sarah's light flickered as her hand shook. I grabbed her wrist, pulling her closer to me, whispering, "Stay quiet. Don't move." Heavy footsteps echoed through the front of the gas station. Whoever it was didn't bother hiding their approach. The boards creaked under their weight, the sound deliberate, threatening. Sarah's breath quickened. Grandma, what do we do? I clutched the box of letters to my chest. We wait. We listen. The footsteps grew nearer, crunching over broken glass and debris. Then they stopped. Silence. For a moment, I thought whoever it was had left, but then a voice cut through the stillness. Margaret. I froze. My name. Spoken low, calm, but filled with power. The voice continued. You shouldn't have opened that cabinet. Sarah's hand gripped mine, trembling. I whispered, they know. The man's voice moved, drifting across the room like smoke. Put down the box, Margaret, and no one gets hurt. You don't understand what you're holding. I forced myself to speak, though my voice shook. Who are you? The man chuckled softly. We are the circle. And that, his tone sharpened, does not belong to you. Sarah's eyes widened in panic. Grandma, we can't stay here. My heart pounded. Run on my signal. The man's footsteps started again, closer now, echoing like drums. I scanned the room, searching for escape. The back wall had a small, broken window half hidden by crates. It was narrow, but maybe we could squeeze through. I leaned close to Sarah's ear. Now. We bolted. Our footsteps thundered across the floor. The man shouted, "Stop!" But we didn't. Sarah reached the crates first, pushing them aside with all her strength. I scrambled after her, clutching the box. She shoved me through the window before climbing out herself. The sharp glass scraped my arm, but adrenaline dulled the pain. We landed hard in the weeds behind the building. Sarah gasped, "Go!" We ran, stumbling through the tall grass, the sound of pursuit crashing behind us. My lungs burned, my legs heavy, but fear kept me moving. Finally, we reached the tree line at the edge of the property. We dove into the shadows, crouching low. For several long minutes we listened. The man's footsteps crunched closer, then stopped. Silence stretched. My heart thundered in my ears. Then faintly, his voice drifted through the night. You can't run forever, Margaret. The circle is everywhere. Sarah clutched my arm, her eyes glistening. Grandma, he knows your name. He knows us. I squeezed her hand. That means Bob was right. We can't trust anyone. But it also means we're closer to the truth than they want. We didn't return to the house that night. Instead, Sarah drove us to her apartment on the far side of town. It was small, tucked above a bakery, but safe, or at least it felt that way. Inside, we locked every door, shut every curtain, and sat at the kitchen table with the box between us. Sarah broke the silence. What did that man mean? That it doesn't belong to us? I shook my head. I don't know. But Bob left it for me, not for them. He wanted me to find it. We opened the box again. This time I carefully examined each letter. Most were warnings repeating the same message. The circle is watching. Trust no one. But one stood out. The handwriting was rushed, uneven, as though Bob had written it in great haste. Maggie, if you make it this far, you must dig where they told you not to. The truth is in the ground. Not where I lived, but where I rest. I gasped. Sarah, he's talking about the grave. Her eyes widened. Grandpa's coffin. I nodded. He's telling us to dig, to see for ourselves what's inside. Sarah shook her head in disbelief. Grandma, are you saying we have to go back to the cemetery? At night? I swallowed hard. Yes. If the coffin isn't what it seems, then we'll never know the truth until we open it. Silence hung heavy between us. We both knew how insane it sounded. Digging into a grave. But deep down I felt it, the pull of the truth waiting beneath the earth. Finally, Sarah whispered. Then we'll go tomorrow night. When no one's around. I nodded, my chest tight. Tomorrow night. The following evening, the world outside her apartment felt unnaturally still. We dressed in dark clothes, packed shovels in the trunk of her car, and drove to the cemetery under the cover of night. The headlights cut through the mist, casting eerie shadows across the tombstones. My stomach churned as we pulled up near Bob's grave. We stepped out, the cold air biting against our skin. The cemetery was silent except for the rustle of leaves in the wind. Sarah handed me a shovel. Her voice shook. Are you sure about this, Grandma? I tightened my grip. We have to know. We approached the grave slowly, the mound of dirt still fresh from the funeral. The flowers lay wilted on top, their colors faded. I whispered, I'm sorry, Bob, but I need answers. We dug. Each strike of the shovel against the earth echoed like thunder in the silence. Sweat dripped down my forehead despite the cold. Sarah's breath came in short gasps as she shoveled beside me. The deeper we went, the heavier the dread grew. My arms ached, my back screamed, but I kept digging. Finally, the shovel struck something hard. Clunk. Sarah froze. That's it. The coffin. My hands trembled as we brushed the dirt away. The wooden surface appeared dark and damp. My chest tightened so hard it hurt. Sarah whispered, Grandma, do we open it? I nodded slowly, my hands shaking. Together we pried the lid open. The hinges groaned. And when the coffin opened, both of us gasped in horror. It wasn't Bob lying inside. It was a mannequin. A life-size dummy, dressed in his clothes, a mask of his face stretched across it. Sarah staggered back, her hand over her mouth. Oh my God. Grandma. He really isn't dead. I clutched the edge of the coffin, my whole body trembling. Tears welled in my eyes, not from grief this time but from shock. Bob had been right. The coffin wasn't what it seemed. But before I could process what it all meant, headlights suddenly swept across the cemetery, flooding us in blinding light. A car door slammed. Heavy footsteps crunched across the gravel. And a voice shouted into the night. Step away from the coffin, Margaret. The blinding headlights pinned us like animals caught in a trap. Sarah shielded her eyes with her arm while I stood frozen beside the open coffin, my heart slamming against my ribs. The voice boomed again, sharp and commanding. Step away, Margaret. Now. The figure emerged from the glare, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark coat. He wasn't alone. Two more shadows climbed out of the car, their flashlights slicing through the mist. Sarah gripped my hand, whispering, Grandma, what do we do? I swallowed hard, forcing my trembling legs to move. Slowly, I stepped in front of her, shielding her with my body. Who are you? I called out. My voice wavered but didn't break. The man's flashlight swung to the coffin. The beam froze on the mannequin's pale face. His tone turned cold. You weren't supposed to see that. Sarah gasped. So you knew? You knew the coffin was fake. The man ignored her question. He took a step forward, his boots crunching on the gravel. Give us the letters, Margaret. And the key. Hand them over, and maybe we'll let you walk away. I tightened my grip on the bag slung across my shoulder. The bag carrying Bob's letters and the brass key. Why? What do you want with them? The man's flashlight blinded me as it rose to my face. You ask too many questions. That's why Bob had to disappear. My breath caught. Sarah clutched my arm tighter. Grandma, don't. The other two shadows began circling us, closing in from both sides. I could feel the trap tightening. I forced my voice steady. If Bob is alive, where is he? The man chuckled, a low, cruel sound. Alive? Let's just say, he belongs to us now. And if you want to stay alive too, you'll hand over everything. Sarah's whisper was frantic. Grandma, we can't give it to them. I hesitated. My whole body shook. Every instinct screamed that if we handed over the letters, we'd lose the only chance of finding Bob. But if we resisted, the man snapped his fingers. One of the shadows lunged toward us. Sarah screamed. I swung my shovel wildly, the metal crashing against the ground inches from his feet. Stay back, I shouted. My voice cracked but carried enough fire to make him hesitate. The leader raised his hand. Careful, Margaret. You're in far deeper than you realize. He stepped closer, lowering his voice to a hiss. The circle always collects what belongs to it. And you? His flashlight swept across the open grave, then back to me. Are running out of time. Then, without warning, he lifted a small device from his coat and pressed a button. The ground beneath us vibrated. A deep rumble shook through the cemetery, and the mannequin inside the coffin twitched, its head jerking unnaturally to one side. Sarah shrieked. Grandma, it's moving. The mannequin's head jerked sideways with a sickening crack. Sarah's scream pierced the night, and I stumbled back from the grave, my shovel slipping from my hands. The leader of the men stood calm, his finger still pressed against the small device. A cruel smile tugged at his lips. See? It's not just a dummy. It's a warning. The mannequin's arms twitched, its fingers curling into claws, then relaxing again. It moved like a puppet, strings pulled by invisible hands. Sarah clutched my sleeve, trembling. Grandma, what is that thing? I shook my head, my mouth dry. It's not him. It's not your grandpa. It's something else. The leader's voice cut sharp through the night. Step away. You were never meant to see this. Hand over the letters and the key, and perhaps we'll forget this little grave-digging stunt. I forced myself to stand tall, though fear clawed at my insides. Forget it. You faked my husband's death, buried a mannequin, and now you want me to hand over the only clues he left behind? No. The man's smile vanished. Then you'll regret it. He pressed the button again. The mannequin's torso lifted stiffly, its mouth opening wide in a silent scream. The sound of gears whirred beneath its skin. It wasn't just a puppet. It was a machine, a grotesque imitation of life. Sarah's knees buckled. Grandma, we have to run. I grabbed her hand and pulled, forcing my body into motion. We scrambled over the mound of dirt, sprinting between headstones as the men shouted behind us. Flashlights cut through the dark, beams slicing over our shoulders. Don't let them get away, the leader barked. We darted between graves, our breath ragged, our footsteps pounding against the damp earth. My lungs burned, but fear pushed me onward. Sarah tugged me toward the back gate of the cemetery, its rusted frame half broken. This way, she hissed. We squeezed through, scraping against jagged metal, then tumbled into the weeds beyond. Behind us, the men crashed after us, their heavy boots slamming the ground. Sarah pulled me toward her car parked down the hill. Come on, Grandma. We threw ourselves inside, slamming the doors just as a flashlight beam swept across the windshield. Sarah fumbled with the keys, her hands shaking. Come on, come on. The engine roared to life. She slammed the gas, and the tires screeched, spitting gravel. The car lurched forward, tearing down the narrow road away from the cemetery. In the rearview mirror, I saw them. The men stood at the gate, their faces glowing white in the headlights. One of them lifted his hand and pointed straight at us. They're not going to stop, Sarah panted. They're going to keep coming. I clutched the bag tighter. Then we can't stop either. Not until we know the truth. We drove through the night, not daring to stop until the cemetery was miles behind us. Finally, Sarah pulled over near an old rest area by the highway. The car hummed as she shut off the engine, and silence filled the space. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Our breaths were shaky, our bodies trembling with exhaustion and fear. Sarah finally broke the silence. Grandma, what was that thing in the coffin? A machine? A mannequin that moves? Why would they bury something like that? I shook my head slowly. I don't know. But Bob knew. He tried to warn us. The circle, whoever they are, they didn't just fake his death. They replaced him with that. Sarah hugged herself, shivering despite the warmth of the car. It felt like it was watching us. Like it was alive somehow. I remembered the twitching, the way its mouth opened. My stomach churned. Maybe that was the point. To scare us. To remind us they control everything. Sarah turned to me, her eyes desperate. But Grandpa is alive. Somewhere. He has to be. That's why he sent those messages. That's why he left the letters. I placed a trembling hand over hers. Yes. He's alive. And we're going to find him. No matter what it takes. Morning light crept through the windshield, soft and pale. Neither of us had slept much. My body ached from the night's events, but my mind refused to rest. Sarah yawned, stretching her stiff arms. We can't go back home. They'll be waiting for us. I nodded. Then we go somewhere they won't expect. Somewhere only Bob would have told us about. I reached into the bag, pulling out the letters again. One in particular drew my eye, the rushed one. Dig where they told you not to. The truth is in the ground. Not where I lived, but where I rest. Sarah frowned. We already dug. We saw the coffin. I shook my head. Yes. But maybe that wasn't the only place. What if there's another spot? Another grave? Sarah's brow furrowed. Like a second burial? My pulse quickened. Yes. Bob was clever. If he knew they were watching, he would have left another clue. Sarah leaned closer. Then where? I thought back to the funeral. To the strange way the men in black stood at the far edge of the cemetery, away from everyone else. My mind replayed the image. One of them near an older, unmarked grave, tapping his shoe against the dirt. I gasped. That's it. The unmarked graves. He's telling us to dig there. Sarah's eyes widened. Grandma, are you saying Grandpa might have hidden something in another grave? I nodded slowly. Not his body, but something important. Something the circle doesn't want us to find. We drove back into town cautiously, avoiding main roads, always watching the mirrors. Sarah parked a few blocks from the library, and we went inside to use the old microfilm archives. Hours passed as we searched through cemetery maps, burial records, and old obituaries. Finally, we found it. A small section of the cemetery reserved for abandoned or unclaimed graves. Many had no markers, only faint records in dusty files. Sarah pointed at the map. Here. This row. Unmarked. I traced my finger along the faded lines, my heart pounding. Yes. That's where we need to go. Tonight. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in streaks of red and gold. As night fell, we returned to the cemetery, our shovels heavy in our hands. The air was colder this time, sharper, as though the ground itself knew we were trespassing. We found the row of unmarked graves, weeds thick around them. Sarah whispered. Which one? I pulled out Bob's rushed letter again. My eyes caught on one phrase I hadn't noticed before. Not where I lived, but where I rest. I scanned the graves, then saw it, one small weathered stone with faint, almost invisible letters. Rest. My chest tightened. There. We dug. The earth was harder this time, packed with roots, but we pushed through, sweat dripping down our faces. Finally, our shovels struck wood again. We exchanged a look, then pried open the small, rotting box buried beneath. Inside was no mannequin. No body. Instead, wrapped in plastic, lay a stack of photographs and a leather journal. Sarah lifted the journal carefully, her voice trembling. Grandma, this is Grandpa's handwriting. I opened the first page. Bob's words leapt at me. If you're reading this, it means I'm still alive, but not for long. They're holding me underground. Follow the tunnels. Trust only the key. I gasped, my fingers trembling against the paper. He's alive. And he's telling us how to find him. Sarah's face lit with hope, but before we could say another word, a sound froze us in place. Engines. Multiple cars. Pulling into the cemetery. Sarah's whisper cracked with panic. Grandma, they're here. The low rumble of engines crawled across the night, sending a chill through my veins. Headlights slashed through the fog, cutting across the rows of tombstones like knives. Sarah's hands trembled as she clutched the leather journal to her chest. Grandma, they found us. I tightened my grip on the shovel, my body trembling but refusing to back down. Stay calm. We've been here before. We'll get out of it again. The first car door slammed. Then another. And another. The voices came next, low, commanding, practiced. They weren't just men searching. They were hunters, closing in on prey. "They're spreading out," Sarah whispered, her voice cracked with fear. I glanced at the open box in the dirt, the photographs glinting faintly under the moonlight. I stuffed them quickly into my bag, heart pounding. If they got their hands on Bob's journal, all his sacrifices would be for nothing. The crunch of footsteps grew louder. Flashlight beams swept across the trees, over headstones, closer and closer to where we crouched. I leaned close to Sarah, whispering, "Run on my signal." She clutched the journal tighter. "Where?" "Anywhere away from here. Just move." A beam of light flicked over the grave we'd just dug. "Over here," a man shouted. We had seconds. "Now," I hissed. We bolted. Our legs burned as we scrambled over uneven ground, weeds whipping against our ankles. Shouts erupted behind us. "Don't let them escape." The cemetery became a maze of shadows and stone. Sarah pulled ahead, nimble and fast, but I forced myself to keep up despite my lungs screaming. We darted between gravestones, flashlights chasing us like hungry wolves. Then a wall. An iron fence rose in front of us, tall and sharp, its spikes gleaming under the moonlight. Sarah spun around, panic flooding her face. "Grandma, we're trapped." "No," I panted, scanning the line. My eyes caught on a tree leaning close to the fence, its low branches stretching almost across the top. "There. Climb." Sarah hesitated only a second before scrambling up the trunk. She swung her leg across the branch and reached for the fence. I followed, my body protesting every movement, but adrenaline pushed me upward. Behind us, flashlights blazed. Voices shouted, "There." Up the tree. Sarah dropped down on the other side of the fence, landing hard but safe. She looked up at me, breathless. "Grandma, jump." I swung my legs over, gritting my teeth as the iron scraped my hands. Then I dropped, crashing onto the damp earth below. Pain shot through my knees, but I pushed myself up. We ran. The cemetery faded behind us as we stumbled into the cover of the woods. The shouts grew fainter, swallowed by the trees. Finally, we collapsed against a fallen log, gasping for breath. My chest heaved, my body aching, but the journal was still safe. Sarah opened it again, her hands shaking. "Grandma, listen." She read aloud. "They've hidden me underground. Not in the open. Not in the light. The tunnels are beneath the old church, the one they abandoned years ago. Find the entrance near the well. Trust the key. It opens more than you think." I froze. The church. I remembered it. An old stone building on the edge of town, boarded up and left to rot after a fire decades ago. I'd passed it countless times, but never once imagined it held secrets. Sarah's eyes burned with determination. "That's where he is. We have to go there." I nodded slowly, though my stomach twisted with fear. "Yes, but not tonight. They'll be looking for us everywhere. We need to be careful." We spent the night hiding in the woods, shivering under the branches, too afraid to move. The forest noises crept in, owls hooting, branches snapping, but nothing compared to the terror of men hunting us. By dawn, exhaustion pressed heavy on my bones, but there was no time to rest. Sarah led us back to the road, where we hitched a ride from a farmer heading into town. He eyed our dirt-covered clothes and scratches with suspicion, but asked no questions. Once in town, Sarah guided us to a friend's apartment above a laundromat. The small space smelled of soap and dust, but it was safe. For the first time in hours, we locked the door and collapsed on the couch. Sarah opened the journal again, studying every word, every line. "Grandpa said the tunnels are beneath the church, and he mentioned the key again." "Grandma, do you think it's more than just a locker key?" I pulled the brass key from my pocket, studying it in the light. It was heavier than it looked, with strange markings etched along the side. Not numbers. Symbols. My chest tightened. This isn't for just one lock. Bob left it for something bigger. Something hidden. Sarah leaned closer. "Then we take it to the church. Tonight." I nodded, though dread curled inside me. Tonight could change everything. As night fell, we crept through back alleys, avoiding main streets where the circle might be watching. The town felt different now, every shadow a threat, every stranger a spy. The church loomed at the edge of the woods, its stone walls blackened from fire, its windows boarded shut. Weeds grew wild around the crumbling steps, and the old bell tower leaned as though the earth itself wanted to swallow it. Sarah whispered. Creepy doesn't even begin to cover it. We approached cautiously, the silence pressing heavy against us. The journal's words echoed in my mind. Find the entrance near the well. The old well sat behind the church, its stones cracked, the wooden cover half rotted. I knelt beside it, running my hand along the edges. And there, almost invisible, was a small keyhole carved into the stone. Sarah gasped. The key! My hand shook as I slid the brass key into the hole. Fit perfectly. I turned it slowly. A low click echoed from beneath the ground, followed by a deep rumble. The earth shuddered. The well cover groaned, then shifted aside on hidden gears, revealing a dark staircase spiraling down into the earth. Sarah's eyes widened. Grandma, it's real. The tunnels are real. I swallowed hard, staring into the abyss below. The air that rose from it was cold, damp, and foul, like the breath of something long buried. Stay close to me, I whispered, gripping her hand. We descended slowly, each step creaking beneath our weight. The darkness swallowed us, the air growing colder with every step. At the bottom, the tunnel stretched out before us, lined with stone, flickering with faint electric lights that hummed weakly. Sarah whispered, they're still using this place. I nodded, which means Bob is close. We moved forward, our footsteps echoing softly. The journal's last words burned in my mind. Trust the key. It opens more than you think. But before we could go further, voices drifted down the tunnel. Men talking, laughing, coming closer. Sarah's eyes widened with panic. Grandma, they're down here. We pressed against the wall, holding our breath as the footsteps grew louder. The shadows of two men stretched across the tunnel wall, their flashlights cutting through the gloom. Sarah clutched my hand so tight it hurt. And just as the light swept over us, I realized something that froze me cold. The journal was gone. My heart dropped into my stomach. The bag was open. The journal, Bob's journal, was gone. I clutched at the straps, searching frantically, but it wasn't there. Sarah's face went pale. Grandma, what do you mean it's gone? You had it. The voices drew closer. Flashlights bounced off the tunnel walls. We didn't have time to argue. It must have slipped out when we ran. I whispered, forcing calm into my voice even as panic clawed at me. Or someone took it. Sarah's eyes widened. You think they already have it? Before I could answer, the two men appeared around the bend. Their beams blinded us. There, one shouted. I yanked Sarah's hand, and we bolted deeper into the tunnel. Our footsteps echoed like thunder, the walls closing in around us. The men shouted, their boots pounding behind us. My lungs burned, but I didn't dare slow down. The tunnel split ahead. Two paths, one to the left, one to the right. Which way? Sarah gasped. I didn't know. I couldn't think. I listened, desperate. From the left came faint dripping water. From the right, faint vibrations, like machinery humming far away. Right, I shouted, pulling her along. We sprinted into the darker passage, the air colder, thicker. The men followed, their voices echoing, growing closer. Then suddenly the ground beneath us shifted. The stones crumbled. Grandma! Sarah screamed as the floor gave way. We fell. The tunnel swallowed us whole. The world spun in darkness as the ground gave way beneath us. My scream caught in my throat, smothered by the rush of air as Sarah and I plummeted. Then impact. My body slammed against damp earth. Pain exploded through my back, but I was alive. Beside me, Sarah groaned. Grandma, are you okay? I forced air into my lungs, wincing. I think so. I'm fine, she panted, though her voice trembled. We lay still for a moment, gasping in the cold blackness. Then I opened my eyes wider and realized this wasn't just a hole. We'd fallen into another tunnel. Wider. Older. The stone walls glistened with moisture, and faint torches flickered along the sides, casting ghostly shadows. Sarah sat up, brushing dirt from her face. Her eyes darted around nervously. Grandma, someone lit these torches. This place is being used. My chest tightened. She was right. We weren't in an abandoned tunnel. We were in the circle's domain. The echo of footsteps above reminded me of the men chasing us. My stomach nodded. We need to move before they realize where we fell. Sarah helped me to my feet. Every bone ached, but adrenaline pushed me forward. We crept cautiously through the tunnel. Our footsteps muffled against the damp floor. The silence was thick, broken only by the faint dripping of water. After a few minutes, Sarah whispered, "Grandma, what if we're walking deeper into their trap?" I squeezed her hand. "Then we stay sharp. And we remember why we're here, Bob. He left clues for us. He wanted us to find him." We pushed on. The tunnel opened into a cavernous chamber. I froze at the sight before us. Rows of crates lined the walls, stacked high. Strange machines hummed quietly, their red and green lights blinking in the shadows. Wires snaked across the floor, leading to a massive steel door at the far end of the room. Sarah's eyes widened. "Grandma, what is this place?" I shook my head, speechless. It looked like some kind of underground facility. But for what? We crept closer to the crates. Sarah pried one open with trembling fingers. Inside lay rows of black books, their covers blank except for a single symbol. The same circle within a circle marking we'd seen before. Sarah flipped one open, her voice shaking. "Names, dates, codes. Grandma, these are records. Files." I snatched one from her, scanning the neat handwriting. Page after page listed people. Ordinary names, addresses, even occupations. My blood ran cold. They're keeping track of people. Sarah's face went pale. But why? Before I could answer, a sudden noise froze us in place. A metallic clang echoed from the steel door at the far end. Slowly, it began to creak open. We ducked behind a stack of crates, hearts pounding. From the doorway, two men entered, their flashlights cutting across the room. They wheeled in another crate and set it down with a thud. One of them spoke, his voice low but clear. "Shipment's ready. The rest will be moved tomorrow night. The circle doesn't want delays." The other man grunted in agreement. "What about the old man? Do we keep him alive?" My blood froze. Sarah's eyes snapped to mine. "Old man." The first man shrugged. "For now. They said he still knows things. Once he talks, then he's done." I bit down hard on my lip to stop from gasping. Bob. They were talking about Bob. He was alive, and he was here. The men left, the heavy door slamming shut behind them. Sarah gripped my arm, her voice trembling with hope. "Grandma, did you hear that? Grandpa's alive. We're so close." Tears burned in my eyes, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Yes, but we have to be smart. If they catch us now, we'll never reach him." We waited until silence returned, then crept from behind the crates. Sarah's gaze locked on the steel door. "That has to be where they're keeping him." I nodded. "And the key might open it." We crossed the room quickly, avoiding the wires and crates. The steel door loomed above us, massive and foreboding. I pulled out the brass key, my hands trembling. There, a small panel near the lock. A keyhole. I slid the key in, twisting slowly. Click. The lock released. Sarah gasped. It worked. With both hands, we pulled the heavy door open just enough to slip inside. What lay beyond stole my breath. A narrow corridor stretched ahead, lined with cells. Iron bars sealed each one, and within them sat figures, people. Men, women, even children, their faces pale, their eyes hollow. Some lay on the ground, too weak to move. Others stared at us in silence, as if afraid to hope. Sarah clapped a hand over her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Oh my God, they're keeping people here." My chest heaved. The circle wasn't just hiding Bob. They were holding prisoners. From one of the cells, a frail voice croaked. Who are you?" I stepped closer, gripping the bars. "We're looking for Bob. Bob Carter. Do you know him?" The man inside nodded weakly. "They brought him down 3 nights ago. He's alive, but weak." Sarah sobbed quietly, clinging to my arm. "Where is he?" I asked urgently. The man lifted a trembling finger, pointing toward the far end of the corridor. "Last cell." Hope surged through me, hot and wild. We hurried down the hall, past the broken faces staring at us. My heart hammered as we reached the final cell. And there, curled on the floor, his hair longer, his body thinner, but unmistakable, was Bob. My knees buckled. Bob. His head lifted slowly, his eyes dull but alive. When he saw me, a flicker of recognition sparked. His lips moved. Maggie. I gripped the bars, tears streaming down my cheeks. It's me. It's me, Bob. I found you. Sarah sobbed beside me. Grandpa. Bob's weak smile broke my heart. I knew you'd come. I fumbled with the key, desperate to fit it into the cell's lock. It slid in perfectly, turning with a soft click. The door creaked open. We rushed inside, dropping to our knees beside him. I held his frail hands, whispering, "We're getting you out. Right now." Bob's grip tightened weakly. His voice was little more than a rasp. "Too dangerous, you have to go." "No," I said fiercely, shaking my head. "Not without you." Before he could answer, a sharp alarm blared through the tunnels. Red lights flashed overhead. Sarah's eyes widened in horror. "They know we're here." The sound of boots thundered from the corridor. Dozens of them. Bob tried to push me away, his voice urgent. "Run, Maggie. Take Sarah and go." But I held on tighter, my heart breaking. "I won't leave you again." The boots drew closer. Shadows filled the doorway. We were trapped. The pounding boots grew louder, echoing like drums of doom. Sarah clung to my arm, tears streaking her cheeks. Bob struggled to sit up, his face pale but determined. "They'll kill you if you stay," he whispered hoarsely. "Please, Maggie, go." I shook my head fiercely. "No. We came for you and we're leaving together." The first figures appeared in the corridor, circle guards in black coats, their flashlights slicing through the red haze. "There they are," one barked. Sarah gasped. I pulled her close, forcing myself to think. My eyes darted to the open cells around us. Dozens of weak, imprisoned faces stared back at us, helpless, hopeless. But then it hit me, we weren't alone. I shouted, my voice echoing through the chamber. "Everyone stand. Now. Fight with us. This is your chance." For a heartbeat, silence. Then like a spark catching fire, the prisoners stirred. One man grabbed his cell bars and rattled them furiously. Another stumbled forward, his voice hoarse. "We're not slaves anymore." The guards hesitated, caught off guard by the sudden uprising. I snatched a broken chain from the floor and held it like a weapon. Sarah grabbed a loose stone. Even Bob, weak as he was, forced himself upright, leaning on me for strength. The guards charged. Chaos erupted. Prisoners pushed against their doors, shouting, screaming, rattling the bars so violently the sound was deafening. It was enough to distract the guards, to slow them. "Now," I hissed to Sarah. Together we half-carried Bob down the corridor, dodging beams of light. A guard lunged at us, swinging his baton. I swung the chain wildly, striking his arm. He yelped, dropping it. Sarah hurled the stone, hitting him square on the forehead. He collapsed. We ran. My heart thundered, my breath ragged, but I didn't look back. Behind us, the chamber shook with shouts, alarms, and the roar of rebellion. Bob leaned heavily on me, his voice weak but certain. You gave them hope." I tightened my grip on his hand. "And now we have to give them more by escaping." But just as we neared the steel door, a shadow blocked our path. The leader. The same man from the graveyard. His face twisted in a cruel smile. "You should have stayed in your quiet little life, Margaret," he sneered. "Now you'll never leave here alive." The leader stepped into the red glow, tall and menacing, his coat sweeping the ground as if he owned the darkness itself. His cold eyes locked on me first, then Sarah, then finally Bob, who leaned weakly against my shoulder. "I told you," he sneered. "The circle always collects what belongs to it. And you three." He tilted his head, smiling like a wolf. "You belong to us now." Sarah squeezed my arm, her whisper trembling. "Grandma, what do we do?" I raised the broken chain in my hand, though my arms quivered from exhaustion. "We fight," I said firmly, my voice louder than I felt inside. The leader laughed, a cruel, echoing sound. "You? Fight us?" He gestured toward the corridor behind him. More guards poured in, dark shapes with weapons, their flashlights cutting through the chaos of screaming prisoners still rattling their cells. "There's no escape, Margaret. Not for you. Not for your husband. Not for the girl." Bob tried to step forward, but his knees buckled. I caught him, holding him upright. His voice rasped with desperation. "Leave me, Maggie. Please. Save Sarah." "No." I barked. My voice cracked with fury. "I've spent too many years without you. I won't lose you again." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Grandpa, we came for you. We're not leaving without you." The leader's expression darkened. He signaled to the guards. "Take the old man first. He's already broken. The rest we'll deal with later." The guards surged forward. My heart pounded like a war drum. Then, from behind us, a loud metallic creak echoed through the chamber. One of the prisoners had broken free. A tall, broad man with wild eyes staggered into the corridor, swinging a heavy pipe. He slammed it against the wall with a roar. "Now," he shouted. Like a wave crashing against rocks, more prisoners burst from their cells. Men and women who had been beaten down but not broken. They attacked with fists, chains, stones. Anything they could grab. Chaos exploded. Guards fought back, swinging batons and shouting orders, but the sheer force of the prisoners overwhelmed them. I seized the chance. "Sarah! Bob! This is it, move!" We shoved past the fighting, ducking low. My grip on Bob tightened as I dragged him toward the steel door. The leader shoved through the brawl, his eyes blazing with fury. "Margaret!" His voice thundered. "You can't run from us forever." Sarah turned, her eyes flashing. "Watch us." We slipped through the steel door, slamming it behind us. I fumbled with the brass key, locking it fast. For a moment, silence. Only the sound of our ragged breathing. Then bang. The door shuddered under the force of blows from the other side. They were trying to break it down. "Go!" I shouted, pulling Bob and Sarah down the narrow corridor beyond. The tunnel twisted, the air colder, fouler. The ground sloped upward and faintly I smelled fresh air. Hope sparked in my chest. We stumbled faster, though Bob grew heavier with every step. His body trembled, his strength nearly gone. Sarah and I each hooked an arm around him, carrying him together. Behind us, the pounding grew louder. The circle was coming. Suddenly, the tunnel opened into a massive underground chamber. My breath caught. A wooden platform jutted out over a black abyss. Chains hung from the ceiling, swaying gently. In the middle of the platform sat an old winch system, connected to a wooden lift. Sarah's eyes widened. "It's an elevator. It must lead out." We rushed to it, laying Bob gently onto the platform. I grabbed the winch handle and turned with all my strength. The chains rattled, the lift shuddered, slowly beginning to rise. But from the tunnel behind, shadows spilled into the chamber. The leader emerged, his face twisted in rage. "You think you can steal from the circle? You think you can take him from us?" He lifted his arm, and in his hand glinted a gun. "Grandma!" Sarah screamed. I froze. The winch creaked, the lift rising painfully slow. Bob lay limp, his eyes half closed. Sarah clung to me. Terror etched across her face. The leader aimed straight at me. "Step away, or I end this now." For a heartbeat, time stopped. My heart hammered so loudly I could hear nothing else. I looked at Bob. His lips moved, barely a whisper. "Don't stop." I looked at Sarah. Her eyes pleaded with me, shining with trust. I looked at the leader. And I made my choice. With a cry, I shoved the winch with all my strength. The lift lurched upward faster, the chains groaning under the strain. Sarah scrambled to hold Bob steady. The leader's eyes narrowed. His finger tightened on the trigger. Then bang. The gunshot echoed through the cavern. I stumbled back, pain searing through my side. Sarah screamed. "Grandma." The leader stepped forward, his face triumphant. "You'll never leave this place." Blood dripped warm down my ribs, but I gritted my teeth, forcing myself upright. I wrapped my hands around the winch, ignoring the agony. "Sarah. Don't stop, hold him." I cranked harder, the lift rattling higher, closer to the faint circle of light above. My vision blurred, but I didn't let go. The leader raised the gun again, aiming for Sarah this time. And then, an explosion of sound shook the chamber. The wall behind the leader collapsed in a shower of rock and dust. Prisoners burst through, wielding chains, pipes, and torches. The rebellion had followed us. The leader spun in shock, shouting orders, but the prisoners swarmed him and his guards. The chamber filled with chaos. Sarah screamed over the noise. Grandma, hurry. I turned the winch with the last of my strength, every muscle screaming. The lift rose faster, groaning, swaying, carrying Bob and Sarah toward the light above. But my strength faltered. My knees buckled. The leader broke free of the chaos, his face twisted with fury, his gun raised once more. And this time he was aiming directly at Sarah. The leader's gun glinted in the red light as he aimed directly at Sarah. My heart stopped. No! I screamed, and with the last surge of strength I hurled the broken chain still clutched in my hand. It spun through the air and struck his wrist. The gunshot went wild, sparking against the stone ceiling. Prisoners lunged at him, dragging him down. He fought like a beast, but there were too many. His screams echoed as they pulled him into the chaos. I staggered, my vision swimming, my side burning from the wound. The lift was almost at the top now. Sarah clung to Bob, shouting down at me. Grandma, come on. Jump. I grabbed the chain of the winch, pulling myself onto the swaying platform. My body screamed in protest, but I clung on as the lift creaked higher and higher. Below us, the chamber was filled with battle, guards and prisoners locked in violent struggle, shouts and cries echoing through the dark. The leader's voice was swallowed in the madness. Then light. The lift broke through a stone opening into the cool night air. Stars sparkled above. For the first time in what felt like forever, I breathed fresh air. We collapsed onto the ground together. Me, Sarah, and Bob. The lift groaned and snapped behind us, falling back into the abyss. We were safe for now. I held Bob's face in my hands, tears blurring my eyes. We made it. You're free. His weak smile was enough to break my heart all over again. Because of you. Maggie. Sarah hugged us both tightly, sobbing. We did it. We beat them. But deep inside, I knew the circle wasn't finished. They were wounded, but not destroyed. The fight wasn't truly over. Still, as I looked at Sarah and Bob, one truth burned brighter than all the darkness. Family is worth fighting for. No matter the cost. My name is Margaret Carter, from the quiet hills of Kentucky, 72 years old. You've just heard my story. And if it taught you anything, let it be this: evil grows in silence. But courage, even from ordinary people, can break chains. Never give up on those you love. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and click the notification bell for more stories like this one. And tell me, where are you watching from tonight? Because the circle may still be out there. And the story may not be over.